In today's episode, we dive into 3 chilling crocodile attacks. From Cassandra Klein, who jumped into action to rescue her dog from an alligator's jaws, only to find herself replacing the dog as the predator's next meal, to Russell Harris, who believed the waters of Groot Island were safe for snorkeling, only to find himself in the deadly grip of a crocodile with a 3,700-pound bite. But first, we begin with the tragic tale of 72-year-old crocodile farmer Luan Nam, whose years of experience couldn't save him when he slipped into a crocodile enclosure. In moments, 40 crocodiles led by a proactive female closed in. It was May 2013 in the rural outskirts of Cam Ranh, Cambodia's second-largest city. The air hung thick with humidity, the scent of stagnant water and decaying fish settling over the rows of crocodile farms that line the countryside. More than 900 such farms operated in the region, their concrete enclosures housing thousands of prehistoric reptiles. The farmers knew the risks, but the industry had sustained their families for generations. Luan Nam had been part of this world for decades. At 72 years old, he had built his farm from the ground up, his enclosures housing more than 40 crocodiles. His business had seen better days. Years ago, a single adult female could fetch over $500, but now the price had dwindled to a mere fraction. The industry was changing, demand fluctuating, but Luan remained steadfast. He was the president of the local Crocodile Farmers Association, a position of honor among those who wrestled daily with nature's deadliest creatures. He had survived close calls before, but experience did not equate to invincibility. Crocodile farming was not like raising cows or pigs. These were apex predators confined in overcrowded pits, their primal instincts intact despite years in captivity. The farms of Cam Ranh supplied skins to Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan, where they were turned into luxury handbags and belts. Their meat and body parts were exported for medicinal use, believed to hold healing properties in traditional Chinese medicine. But the industry was faltering. By 2019, hatchlings that once sold for $7 to $10 were worth only $2.50. Even adult crocodiles fetched a fraction of their former price. The farmers were barely breaking even, and Luan's family had long urged him to sell the farm. But he had refused. This was all he knew. The farm itself was a concrete pit. At its center lay a murky green pool, its surface still except for the occasional ripple as a crocodile shifted beneath the water. The enclosures were overcrowded, the reptiles packed in tight, their bodies piled on top of one another in the rare dry spaces along the perimeter. Wooden planks balanced precariously on raised concrete pillars provided access above the enclosures. Rusted steel steps led down to the feeding areas. The setup was rudimentary, dangerous. A single misstep could mean the difference between life and death. Luan worked with practiced efficiency. Every day he tossed dead fish and chunks of meat into the enclosures, the sound of snapping jaws and splashing water echoing against the cold concrete walls. He had grown accustomed to the sight of blood, to the constant fights that broke out as the crocodiles lunged at one another, their instincts untempered by captivity. But the greatest danger came not from feeding time, but from the nesting cages. Female crocodiles laid their eggs between February and May, fiercely guarding them against any threat. Their nests, hidden in metal cages within the enclosures, held clutches of up to 20 to 60 eggs, each one a valuable commodity. The eggs were sold to other farms or exported to Chinese buyers who paid premium prices. Extracting them was a delicate task, one Luan had performed countless times. He carried only a wooden stick for protection, a fragile defense against creatures capable of crushing bone in a single bite. That morning, Luan stepped onto the wooden walkway that extended over the crocodile enclosure. He scanned the area, his eyes locking onto the metal nesting cage set on a raised platform at the far end. Below, murky water pooled around the concrete where several crocodiles basked motionless. Every egg was valuable, and Luan needed to ensure a successful hatch. Luan carefully descended the middle steps and entered the enclosure, his eyes fixed on the crocodiles around him. The egg-laying cage sat elevated on a platform, separated from the other crocodiles. As Luan neared the female, she hissed sharply, her mouth opening wide to reveal the full extent of her 7 deadly teeth. Without hesitation, Luan struck the cage with his stick. The crocodile responded by thrashing her tail, clearly agitated. Luan prodded her gently, prompting her to move out of the cage. As she neared the edge, she suddenly lunged forward, jaws snapping shut around the stick. Luan yanked it back instinctively, but the movement caused him to lose his balance. He stumbled and crashed to the ground with a heavy thud, the earth of the enclosure cold beneath him. A sharp burst of pain shot through him, his breath leaving in a gasp. The impact disoriented him, but he was aware of the movement around him. The crocodiles turned, their yellow eyes locked onto him, their bodies shifting with slow, deliberate intent. A silence fell over the enclosure, heavier than the humid air. Then they moved. The first crocodile surged forward, its jaws clamping onto his leg. A sharp, searing pain shot through him as he was wrenched sideways. He kicked with his free leg, the impact barely registering against the thick scales of another approaching reptile. More of them were closing in. Another crocodile struck, its teeth sinking deep into his arm before wrenching back. His scream barely left his throat before the limb tore free, disappearing into the beast's maw. Blood sprayed across the concrete. Chaos erupted. More crocodiles lunged, their tails thrashing as they fought over their struggling prey. One clamped onto his torso, the immense force crushing his ribs. Luan was dragged toward the water, his body scraping against the rough ground. Then the water swallowed him whole. The pool exploded into a frenzy of movement. The crocodiles twisted and rolled, their powerful tails propelling them in all directions. Red mixed with green as the feeding intensified. Limbs were torn, flesh ripped from bone. The final death roll sent what remained of him spiraling deeper into the murky depths. Moments later, the struggle ceased. The water stilled. The crocodiles returned to their usual positions, their hunger momentarily satisfied. By the time the workers arrived, Luan's remains lay scattered, his blood soaking the concrete, his arm missing, his body marked by countless bites. The pit was silent once more. The pool was thick with blood, its surface disturbed only by the lazy movements of the crocodiles that had resumed their basking. One reptile remained near the steps, Luan's black sandal still clutched between its teeth, a final grotesque reminder of the man who had ruled the farm for decades. Authorities arrived, but there was little to be done. The reptiles were agitated, snapping at anyone who came too close. Retrieving Luan's body was a challenge in itself, requiring careful maneuvering and the threat of gunfire to drive the creatures back. When they finally pulled him from the pit, there was barely anything left to recover. News of the attack spread quickly. The villagers spoke in hushed voices, murmuring that Luan had been too stubborn, that he should have sold the farm years ago. His family had pleaded with him to leave the business, but he had refused. Now, the very thing that had sustained him for so long had become his undoing. The farm was sold in the weeks that followed, and the crocodiles were sent to new enclosures, their fates uncertain. Some would be turned into luxury handbags, their skins tanned and polished for the fashion elite. Others would be harvested for meat, their bones ground for medicinal use. But the one that had feasted on Luan remained, lurking in the dark waters of another farm, waiting for the next mistake, for the next body to fall. This time, though, it wasn't a farmer with a stick or a careless misstep that would seal a fate. On Hilton Head Island, Cassandra Klein's love for her dog would pull her into a deadly fight as an alligator's grip on her pet's collar quickly turned to her. No stick, no protection. just the cold, unrelenting jaws of a predator in the water. It was August 20th, 2018, and the sun had barely risen over Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. The air was thick with humidity and the morning felt peaceful, almost perfect. The lush landscape of Sea Pines Plantation was quiet at that hour, where Cassandra Klein, known to her friends as Sassy, had her holiday home. The birds had yet to start their chorus, and the only sounds came from the gentle rustling of leaves in the early morning breeze and the soft patter of Cassandra's footsteps as she walked with her dog, Kylie. She had no idea that this simple morning walk would soon cost her a hefty price, one she wouldn't be able to pay. Cassandra had spent most of her life in Endicott, New York, where she had taught kindergarten for 16 years. She was beloved by her students, the kind of teacher who always went the extra mile for her kids. Retirement was just a year away, and she had already planned to leave behind the life she had built in upstate New York for a slower, more peaceful existence in Sea Pines Plantation. For years, she and her husband had spent their summers on Hilton Head Island, falling in love with its beauty and tranquility. It was meant to be their future home, a place to embrace retirement near the calming waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Cassandra had always been an animal lover. She wasn't able to have children, and so her dogs were her babies, her loyal companions. Just 2 weeks before that fateful day, she had lost one of her pets. The grief had still lingered, and now Kylie, her Shetland sheepdog, was her sole source of comfort. They were inseparable. The walk Cassandra was on took them around the side of a lagoon, a large body of water along the golf course that was home to a 9-foot alligator. The alligator, a familiar sight to the locals, was known to frequent the area. Cassandra had always been aware of the dangers of the wildlife on Hilton Head Island. She knew to stay at a safe distance from any water, especially in the warmer months when alligators were more active. She kept at least 14 feet from the water's edge, always mindful of the risks. This morning, the residential estate was quiet. The greenkeeper was working on the 13th green of a nearby golf course just across from the lagoon. Cassandra's footsteps were soft on the ground as she and Kylie walked side by side along the edge of the water. The air was thick with humidity, and the sun had just started to rise, casting long shadows over the lush landscape. The alligator had been lurking in the murky water. Its dark, textured skin blended seamlessly with the shadows, and only its knobby head and eyes were visible above the surface. It was still, waiting for the vibrations that would signal the approach of potential prey. Cassandra, unaware of the predator's proximity, continued her walk, with Kylie sniffing at the undergrowth and occasionally darting toward the edge of the lagoon. The sounds of her paws crunching the grass caught the alligator's attention. It moved quickly. In an instant, the alligator lunged, its jaws snapping at the leash attached to Kylie's collar. The dog, startled, scrambled backward, but the alligator had already grabbed the leash, pulling Kylie toward the water. Cassandra screamed and her heart pounded as she rushed to save her pet. She had always been devoted to her animals, and in that moment, instinct took over. She sprinted toward the water, not thinking of her own safety, but only of Kylie's. The greenskeeper, hearing the commotion from across the lake, looked up. He saw the struggle from across the lagoon as Cassandra fought to free Kylie from the alligator's grip. It was a desperate tug of war, the predator's powerful jaws pulling hard while Cassandra yanked on the leash trying to save her dog. Both Cassandra and Kylie were being dragged closer to the water's edge. Cassandra managed to unclip the leash from Kylie's collar and the dog scrambled to safety. But the moment she was free, the alligator swung its head toward Cassandra. In one swift motion, it latched onto her leg, its powerful jaws clamping down on her flesh. The force of the bite pulled Cassandra further into the water. She screamed, but her cries were drowned out by the sounds of splashing water and the frantic barking of Kylie from the shore. The greenskeeper, now realizing the severity of the situation, pulled out his phone and dialed 911.
911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, there's a lady by an alligator.
Where at, sir?
I'm in Sea Pines.
Okay, where at in Sea Pines?
Call number 13 of the clock course. I'm not sure what the road is.
Okay, you said that she's being attacked by an alligator?
Yeah, drag her in the water.
Okay, how big was it?
It's probably about 8 feet, maybe 7.
It's dragging her into the water?
And she's in the water right now.
Okay, what hole are you on?
It's hole number 13 up near the green. I'm driving to where the road is so I can tell you the road. I'll be at the road in like 30 seconds.
Okay, was anybody still out there with her?
No, there's one other person there. What do you do? You jump in the water? I don't know.
As the operator dispatched emergency services, the greenskeeper watched helplessly as Cassandra was pulled further into the water. His heart raced as he saw her disappear beneath the surface, the water turning murky and dark as the alligator clung to her. Kylie, from the safety of the shore, barked frantically, but Cassandra's struggle grew weaker. Underwater, Cassandra fought for her life. She kicked and punched the alligator, but the predator's hold on her leg was unyielding. Her vision blurred as she felt herself sinking, her lungs burning for air. In less than a minute, Cassandra's fight came to an end. She slipped into unconsciousness, her body going still beneath the water's surface. The greenskeeper, watching from the shore, could do nothing but pray for a miracle. By the time emergency services arrived, it was too late. The alligator was subdued and euthanized by the responding team, and Cassandra's body was pulled from the water. The EMTs immediately began CPR, but their efforts were in vain. Despite their best attempts, Cassandra had drowned, her body showing signs of the brutal struggle she had endured. Kylie the dog was unharmed. She sat on the shore, her eyes locked on the spot where Cassandra had vanished beneath the water. When Cassandra's family was informed of the tragedy, they were devastated. Her mother, who had been at work when the news broke, could not comprehend that such a freak accident had claimed her daughter's life. Her sister, who broke the news to her mother, was equally shaken. They had lost someone who had been full of life and love, a woman who had dedicated herself to teaching and caring for those around her. To lose her so suddenly was beyond belief. Her colleagues at George Johnson Elementary School in Endicott were devastated. Cassandra had been more than just a teacher, she was a friend, an inspiration, and a source of warmth for everyone around her. Her students adored her for her infectious smile and tireless dedication to their success. At her funeral, stories of her kindness and impact filled the room, while her body, badly damaged by the crocodile, lay as a grim reminder of her tragic end. Her body was found, unlike the next story, where a young man's disappearance while snorkeling remained a mystery for the first few days. What they discovered afterward was truly horrifying. It was September 2005 on the remote and rugged Groot Island, located approximately 30 miles off the coast of Northern Territory, Australia. Russell Harris, born and raised in the UK, had long dreamt of adventure. He had traveled the world before settling in Australia, where he met and married Jennifer. Together, they sought out the warmth of Northern Australia, as Russell had secured a position with the Anglo-American mining group BHP Billiton. His job as a technical services superintendent brought them to the vast, mostly untouched island. Groot Island, Australia's fourth largest, was a haven for wildlife and home to one of the richest manganese reserves in the world. Despite the rough and largely barren terrain, it offered a promising opportunity for Russell. Groot Island, with its stunning coastline, was surrounded by some of the most pristine turquoise waters imaginable. While the island was home to many Aborigines, particularly the Warramunga people, it was also a paradise for the birds and animals that called it home. It boasted 83 bird species and was a nesting ground for green and hawk-billed turtles. Despite the island's heavy mining on the western side, it remained an undiscovered sanctuary of sorts. But, like all paradises, it had its darker side. The waters that lapped against the shores were home to more than just tranquil sea life. They were patrolled by sharks, and lurking in the shadows were saltwater crocodiles, ancient, silent predators of terrifying size and power. On this particular day, Russell and Jennifer were joined by another couple, both of whom worked with Russell at the mining company. The four of them decided to take a day trip to Picnic Beach, a scenic and secluded area located in the northeast of the island. Despite the rough road that led to it, the journey was worth the effort. The beach was everything they had hoped for, a stretch of soft, flower-like sand and clear, inviting water. The bay was picture perfect, a place where the group could escape the demands of their work and relax. Jennifer and her friend stayed behind on the sand, while Russell and his companion decided to explore the water. The two men waded into the surf up to their waists before pulling on their snorkels and masks. As they submerged themselves into the inviting water, they marveled at the vibrant underwater world. Brightly colored fish darted among the coral, while large rosses swam near the seafloor. The water was clearer than they could have imagined, offering a view that stretched for yards below them. They swam and dived, pointing out sights to each other, enjoying the idyllic surroundings. What they didn't know, however, was that danger was not far away. Despite its beauty, Groot Island's coastal waters were far from safe. Saltwater crocodiles, larger and more aggressive than their freshwater counterparts, were known to inhabit the region. These creatures, capable of reaching lengths of over 20 feet and with a bite force strong enough to crush bone, were responsible for several attacks on humans each year. Most locals and visitors alike were cautious near riverways and estuaries, but few thought to consider the crocodile threat when swimming in open water. They should have been aware. Russell had heard about the crocodiles, but he had been assured that the area around Picnic Beach was safe. Little did he know, a predator was already closing in on them. While the two men swam near each other, neither noticed the large crocodile silently making its way toward them. The 15-foot predator had been drawn by the vibrations of the men's movements in the water. Using its natural instincts, the saltwater crocodile navigated effortlessly through the water, its tail propelling it toward its prey. Russell and his friend, unaware of the impending danger, continued to explore the sea life below. It wasn't until the crocodile was mere feet away that Russell felt an unexpected tug at his waist. At first, he thought it was a shark, but when he turned around, he was met with the terrifying sight of the crocodile's olive-green, scaly skin. Before he could react, the predator dragged him beneath the water. The fight for survival was brutal and swift. Russell's instincts kicked in, and he struggled against the crocodile, trying to pry its massive jaws off his waist. The creature's bite was unimaginable. Its powerful jaws crushed down with 3,700 pounds per square inch of force, the strongest bite in the animal kingdom. Russell fought for his life, but the crocodile was relentless. It rolled its body over and over, dragging him through the water, disorienting him with each twist. The pressure was unbearable, and Russell could feel his strength slowly fading. He could see the surface of the water just above him, but it was out of reach. Meanwhile, his friend, blissfully unaware of the terror unfolding just beneath the surface, continued his snorkeling. He dove down to examine a fish near the sea floor, but when he surfaced, he noticed Russell was gone. Confused and concerned, he called out, but there was no reply. He dove back under, scanning the area for any sign of his friend. When nothing turned up, he swam back to the beach, assuming Russell had made it out of the water already. As he stood on the shore, wiping the salt water from his face, he saw Jennifer and the other woman looking up, expecting Russell to return. That was when the cold realization hit him. Something had happened to their friend. His body hadn't been found, and no one had heard a commotion in the water. They quickly called emergency services, and a frantic search for Russell began. Hours passed, and the search for Russell took on a sense of urgency. The authorities dispatched boats while the police flew overhead in a plane searching for any sign of the missing man. As the hours stretched into the night, the possibility of Russell's disappearance being due to the strong currents of the ocean was raised. Had he been attacked and taken by a predator like a shark or crocodile, or had he drowned? The search continued through the night with everyone hoping for a miracle. The next day, the search was still underway. It wasn't until the following day that the search bore fruit. Russell's body was discovered, floating just outside the mouth of 8 Mile Creek, a river about a mile from Picnic Beach. As the police moved in to retrieve the body, a massive crocodile appeared in the water, swirling protectively around the body. It was clear the crocodile had been defending its kill. The injuries sustained to Russell's body were consistent with a prolonged struggle, indicating that he had fought fiercely but ultimately succumbed to the crocodile's brutal attack. Back in the UK, news of Russell's death struck his family with overwhelming force. His mother, devastated by the loss of her son, collapsed upon hearing the news. She was rushed to the hospital, sedated and unable to process what had happened. At that moment, she had no understanding of the true circumstances. She was only told that Russell had gone missing at sea and was presumed drowned. Russell's sister flew to Darwin to identify his body, struggling to accept the harsh reality. It wasn't until his remains were examined and authorities completed their investigation that the full truth emerged. Russell had not simply drowned, he had been attacked by a crocodile. The revelation sent a wave of shock through his family, amplifying their grief as they learned the horrifying details of his final moments. The tragedy of Russell's death became a somber lesson in the dangers of the Australian wilderness. Although the area around Picnic Beach had always been thought of as safe, it was clear that the crocodile population was much larger than originally believed. Russell had no way of knowing that a 15-foot crocodile was lurking in the shallow waters, waiting for the right moment to strike. Had he been fully aware of the danger, he never would have entered the water that day. The incident was a painful reminder of the unpredictability of nature. In an instant, a serene snorkeling trip turned into a battle for life, one that ended in tragedy. The story of Russell Harris became a quiet warning to others about the hidden dangers of Australia's wild places. Despite the beauty of the island and the allure of its waters, it was not without its risks. And for Russell, the cost was his life. Thank you for joining us as we uncovered the chilling world of crocodile attacks. But the nightmare doesn't end here. In our next story, we travel to the small, tight-knit community of Naranga in Australia's Northern Territory. There, a quiet afternoon at the creek turned to tragedy when young Barbara, enjoying a simple moment with her friends, unknowingly swam into the jaws of a waiting predator. What happened next left an entire community shaken. Click to watch the full story unfold.